What's up guys, this is LordSevein, and today I wanted to tell you a story about the Ashbringer. As many of you know, Retribution Paladins received this weapon as part of their Class Order Hall campaign. Players new to the Legion expansion know this only as an iconic weapon of the Warcraft franchise. Players who started in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion know that Tyrion Forgering used the Ashbringer to sunder Frostmourne and defeat the Lich King. However, players who have been playing since vanilla are familiar with the rampant speculation, corrupted double, and community frenzy that followed any mention of the blade. My own quest to wield the Ashbringer spans nearly 10 years and is part of the reason why I even started a YouTube channel. As I'm nearing my own 10-year WoW anniversary, I've been thinking of stories I can share with you guys, and this one is at the top of my list. Before we begin, I'm going to assume that you are already familiar with the lore of the Ashbringer, its origins, its transformations, and its ultimate fate up until the recent Legion expansion. I would cover that in this video, but it'll likely be long enough as it is, and there are plenty of people who have done so better than I could. If you want a quick refresher on the player's speculation on Ashbringer, I recommend you check out Doran's Movies video here. Or if you're looking for a more in-depth lore discussion, check out Noble87's video here. Instead, this is my personal story about my quest to find the Ashbringer. In 2006, my major gaming obsession was the Elder Scrolls series. I was playing through Morrowind when Oblivion was released in March, and that game consumed me. My love of Oblivion is the subject of another video, but for now, I'll just say that I had never had an experience that was more engrossing in a game world up to that point. I quickly got into the modding scene as my college friends and I tried to push that game to its limit. In October, while working on a suite of mods for my friends, we watched the South Park episode Make Love, Not Warcraft. If you haven't seen that episode, go find it. It's absolutely fantastic and is, in my opinion, one of the best episodes they've ever made. While watching the episode for the first time, I thought it was funny, but I didn't really know a thing about Warcraft. I'd never played the RTS or the MMO, and the only thing that I knew about it was how much my friend John despised the game and anyone who played it. For the record, John hated everything and everyone. So naturally, my friend and I decided to buy 3 copies of the game to mess with them. Being the filthy casual I am, I chose Alliance and created a Night Elf Hunter, a character I still play to this day. And for a second time that year, I was consumed by a game. Now keep in mind, this was 2006 and vanilla WoW was at its peak. For many people, this was the first experience with a game like this. The world was huge, fairly difficult, often requiring multiple people to do quests, and mysterious. We didn't have the benefit of public test realms, Wowhead, or data mining like we do today. Our only resources were Thoughtbot, the official WoW forums, and speculation. So when a person would roll up to the Ironforge Bank with a unique mount, or purple weapon, or some other such rarity, it was a big deal. This was especially true when it came to legendary weapons, which would often attract hordes of onlookers vying for the chance to see an item they probably didn't even know existed. As I leveled my hunter over the next few months, I became obsessed with the Warcraft lore. Just like in Oblivion, I drank in all the little details around me and began asking some of the bigger questions. What were the origins of that massive skull found in the Master's Glaive in Darkshore? Why couldn't we get to Mount Hyjal, home of one of the most significant events in recent Warcraft history? What was the purpose of the Dark Tower at the southern tip of Deadwind Pass? Where was this Ashbringer weapon mentioned by NPCs in Dire Maul? Questions like these pushed me to explore all facets of the game, from quests to forum posts, and even using terrain exploits to reach areas of the game otherwise inaccessible to the general public. I could spend entire videos talking about my exploration experience in WoW, and I may just do that if you guys are interested. However, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I spent more hours stitching together fragments of lore, in-game evidence, and forum speculation to craft my own answers to these questions than I did leveling. As I dove deeper into the exploration communities, mentions of the Ashbringer became more and more numerous. Were the slimes in Eastern Plaguelands a piece of the puzzle? Why did the NPCs of Dire Maul offer to exchange the head of Nefarian for the location of the Ashbringer? It wasn't until I looted a copy of Nat Pagel's Guide to Extreme Angling from a corpse in Alterac Valley that I became obsessed with finding the blade. Reading the book seemed to point towards fishing as a key to unlocking either the item or its questline. Needless to say, I maxed my fishing skill before I even hit level 60. Despite all of our attempts to find more and more creative fishing spots, no one found anything besides fish. In June 2006, patch 1.11 was released, and with it the Naxxramas raid. Now for those only familiar with the toned-down Wrath of the Lich King version, let me sum it up for you. Honestly, compared to today's raid mechanics, the fights weren't that bad, only requiring the mastery of 1 or 2 mechanics each fight. However, there was a host of other issues that made this raid the most difficult in vanilla WoW. Latency, buff farming, 4 to 8 tank rotations, needing multiple resist gear sets, gear checks requiring loot from the previous raid tiers, each with their own attunements and requirements, and the lack of raid information like boss mechanics made it so that only about 2% of the raiding population ever stepped foot in Naxx to begin with. The final boss was down for the first time nearly 2.5 months after the raid was released. Today's raids are cleared within days or even hours. For more detailed explanation of exactly how difficult this raid was, take a look at this comment on Reddit. You might be asking yourself, how is this relevant? Well, after beating a guild-killing 8-tank overtuned gear check in the form of the 4 Horsemen encounter, an item called the Corrupted Ashbringer could be found in the loot. This set the exploration communities ablaze with speculation, especially when they discovered the blade's unusual traits. At first glance, the Corrupted Ashbringer looks like any other two-handed epic sword, meager stats and an on-hit ability. However, the lucky few able to loot the sword reported occasionally hearing strange whispers when they had the weapon equipped. When strung together in the correct order, the whispers seem to tell the story of Alexandros' betrayal at the hands of his son. The second voice in each whisper was speculated to be Kel'Thuzad or even the Lich King himself. The strange interactions didn't stop there either. Players soon reported a unique scripted event when entering the Scarlet Monastery Cathedral. Instead of being hostile and attacking the player, all the NPCs of the instance bowed and showed respect as their new leader had arrived. Upon reaching Mogarain's son, the spirit of Alexandros Mogarain appeared and killed him. When the player moved to the hidden High Inquisitor Fairbanks, he recounted the history of Mogarain and his son. But, most importantly, he hinted at the possibility that the Corrupted Ashbringer could be reforged into its former glory. All the player needed to do was find Mogarain's son in Outland. Excitement around the Ashbringer and its corrupted double reached a fevered pitch as the first expansion to World of Warcraft was announced, the Burning Crusade. This expansion would take players from the now familiar Azeroth to the world of Outland, the very place Fairbanks had mentioned in the Scarlet Cathedral event. At midnight, January 15th, 2007, I drove through a hellish ice storm to purchase my copy. That night, my newly leveled hunter and I ran through the dark portal into Outland with millions of other players. However, my goal was different from most. Instead of focusing on leveling and gearing for raid content, I was determined to find Mogarain's son. Months passed while I read. I searched. I read. I searched. Nothing. Resigned to my fate, I joined a raiding guild that was progressing through Tier 5 content, Black Temple, Serpent Shrine Cavern, and Tempest Keep. I double-trapped and misdirected my way through heroics and raids, all the while keeping my eyes open for any trace of Mogarain's son. And so it went, until December 2007 when a video was released on WarcraftMovies.com called Tales of the Past 3.
Stop fooling around, Ashbringer.
Oh, so that's how it is. Well then, let us begin.
Not so bad.
If you're a WoW player and you aren't familiar with the machinima, exploration, and lore videos released on Warcraft Movies, you owe it to yourself to get acquainted. This was the site to release videos, as YouTube was only a tiny fraction of what it is now. And if Warcraft Movies was the king of WoW videos, Tales of the Past 3 is its crown jewel. The series originally began as a guild promotion video, but by the third installment became a feature-length movie incorporating hundreds of in-game actors, machinima, and voice acting, as well as lore. The story follows the character of Blazer as he searches for the Ashbringer in order to avenge his friend and family. Although some of the animations and voice acting used hasn't aged very well, the storyline, soundtrack, and epic scenes all make this a classic. Seriously, if you haven't watched this video, go do it now. As someone who is already known for poking around many of the lesser known areas of the game, I was totally blown away. This movie also made me realize that I was tackling the Ashbringer problem from the wrong angle. What I needed wasn't a hunter who could only use the weapon occasionally when ranged wasn't an option. Should I ever find the Ashbringer, I needed a melee character that would reduce my enemies to ash just like the blade's namesake. And so, my best friend and I rolled human retribution paladins with the singular goal of wielding the Ashbringer, corrupted or otherwise. Now keep in mind that this was still a time before heirloom items, recruit a friend, or max level boosts for $60. Leveling through Classic was the same difficult task it was in Vanilla WoW and represented weeks of effort. I would run back to my dorm at night and bang out a few more quests, or even skip classes to get in a few more bars of experience. With each level I imagined my character becoming closer and closer to wielding the Ashbringer. At the same time, I was also experimenting with soloing old content. With an additional 10 levels in gear, people were finding it possible to solo level 60 dungeons and even some raids. Could it be possible that Cody and I could duo them? Even Naxxramas? Turns out, you couldn't. Even a raid group at level 70 couldn't clear Nax without some serious coordination on some fights, including the 4 Horsemen encounter. Our low population server kept us from pugging attempts, and my guild didn't seem interested in doing old content. After reaching level 70 and finding out that Retribution DPS was terrible, again, my guild convinced me to switch to Holy Spec and heal our raid attempts. I hated every second of healing, but I didn't seem to have much choice but to continue on in hopes that one day I might get the chance. Unfortunately, we never got that chance. By 2008, the third expansion to World of Warcraft was announced, Wrath of the Lich King. In this expansion, players would journey to the icy continent of Northrend and finally confront Arthas in Ice-Crowned Citadel. As a lore geek, I could hardly contain myself during the announcement, and that excitement only grew as we learned more about each zone, questline, and feature. It was even hinted that the community would finally get some answers to their Ashbringer questions. I was growing increasingly frustrated with healing tier 5 and 6 raids, and the proposed changes to Retribution Paladins looked promising. When the pre-expansion patch dropped in October 2008, I finally dropped wholly in favor of Retribution and guild hopped to what would become my home for the next 5 years. Unfortunately, the pre-patch wasn't all good news. The first raid of the Wrath expansion was going to be a revamped Naxxramas tomb for level 80 characters. Since so few people experienced the raid, myself included, this initially seemed like an amazing change. We would finally be able to get our hands on the corrupted Ashbringer. However, it was later revealed that the level 60 version of the raid would be removed, and along with it the tier 3 armor set and corrupted Ashbringer. The item would become unobtainable in October. In a panic, I tried to find groups willing and able to run through the instance, but only managed to organize one run that failed to progress very far due to gear. When the pre-patch hit in October, the instance was removed, and so was my ability to get the corrupted Ashbringer. I was disappointed, but the idea of getting a hold of a purified version in the next expansion gave me hope. Or so I thought. When Wrath went live on November 13th, 2008, I dove headfirst into Howling Fjord, the rumored location of the Ashbringer questline. Early into the zone, you're given a quest to retrieve a mysterious holy artifact from a cave below Valgard. Once you pick up the artifact, the undead around you are burned by its holy radiance, again pointing towards the Ashbringer. I turned in the quest expecting it to just be the first step in an expansion-long questline, only to see a cleric reveal himself as Tyrion Forgering wielding the Ashbringer. That son of a bitch. What I wouldn't have done to have a console kill command all of the Elder Scrolls series right about then. It turns out that Tyrion purifies the corrupted Ashbringer during the Light's Hope Chapel event in the Death Knight starting area. Throughout the rest of the expansion, he leads the Northrend forces against Arthas, ultimately defeating him in the last Ice-Crowned Citadel encounter. Although I seethed every time I saw the High Lord, Wrath still stands out as my favorite expansion for WoW. I got deeper into raiding, even becoming a raid leader and officer for my guild. With each boss down, we ranked higher in the server progression ladder. In my free time, I introduced my guildies to exploration, leading expeditions to uninstanced AQ, Curzon crypts, and other oddities. About the same time, I began collecting footage for an exploration video that would showcase our findings. The trailer to that video is also the very first video I uploaded to this channel back in 2009, and it was pretty rough. However, it did get me into video editing, which later gave me the confidence to begin making regular content a few years later. On December 7th, 2010, the 4th expansion to World of Warcraft was released, Cataclysm. Initially, I was very excited for the expansion, especially the raids. However, before release, there was a major shakeup in my guild. Many established members left for more competitive guilds on higher population servers. We tried to fill the holes with members returning to the game for Cataclysm. The process was stressful for the officers, and when it did work out, it never really felt the same to me. Furthermore, I was beginning to get burned out on raid leading and our progression suffered. 2 weeks after Cataclysm launched, I found it difficult to log in, and so I didn't for a long time. Over the next several years, I'd log in for a bit here and there, but my commitment to the game was always fleeting. I'd check out new zones, browse through new features, and then log out for a period of weeks or months. While losing out on raiding was a major reason for this fatigue, another was the death of what I would call classic exploration. That is, the exploration in Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms. The Cataclysm brought with it a revamp of all the classic WoW zones. Quests, lore, and entire zones were added, changed, or removed. Flying mounts were introduced, and the subsequent cleaning of the terrain removed all the little interesting surprises that the developers had left behind. It was no longer possible to see zone experiments, incomplete content, or little nods like the Kara smiley face. Also removed were many of the terrain glitches used to get to these locations: mage blink, wall walking, and mammoth mounting. Although exploration was still possible and the lore for Warcraft is rich, expansions from this point forward seemed much more generic. Legendaries for everyone, silent dungeon groups, and a complete lack of server importance are all contributing factors in my opinion. You can call it nostalgia if you like, but I've found that most people who've played since vanilla tend to agree. And so I'd pop into a few arenas with my friend, gear a bit through looking for raid, and grind out a few old world reputations before leaving for a few weeks. This continued over the next 2 expansions, Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. It got to be so that I didn't even purchase Mists until the last few months of the expansion. Likewise, I played during the Warlords of Draenor launch and enjoyed the leveling experience. Yet only weeks into the expansion, I began to find the Garrison Edition boring, and there wasn't much more content beyond that. Meanwhile, the Ashbringer story seemed dead. After sundering Frostmourne, Tyrion and his blade remained in Hearthglen. He said he was cleaning up the remaining undead in the Eastern Plaguelands. This all changed with the Legion expansion last month. Now with widespread access to the Legion beta, players knew about the new artifact weapon system for months. These spec-specific weapons would become a major part of a character's identity and included iconic weapons like Doomhammer and the Ashbringer. You can bet your ass my ears perked up at the mention of that. The question for me was, exactly how is this going to go down? We got our answer in the pre-expansion patch in August. Spurred by the impending Legion invasion, Tyrion led an advanced force ahead of the Broken Isles invasion. Unfortunately, he was captured and killed in front of the players. That's it. He just kinda dies. It left me scratching my head until I started the Paladin Order Hall campaign. Paladins find out that he is still alive and are sent on a mission to bring him and his blade back. Turns out, he's still dead. But he lives long enough to pass on his legacy, the Ashbringer and the title of High Lord of the Silver Hand, to us. In less than 30 minutes into the expansion, we are leading the cross-faction Paladin sect and wielding the most iconic weapon in the game. At first, this felt amazing. The detail of the holy crystal near the tip, the animation of Wake of Ashes as it stunned entire waves of undead and demons, the unsheathing animation. You could even upgrade Ashbringer to become more powerful through the artifact power mechanic introduced in the expansion. It all felt like the culmination of years worth of effort finally realized. That is, until I went to upgrade Ashbringer for the 4th time and saw another Ret Paladin named Boinker kneeling down at the same altar. He too was the High Lord of the Silver Hand and wielded the same blade as I. As more and more players phased into view, I began to feel like something wasn't quite right. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't know that all Ret Paladins would get the Ashbringer. It's part of the draw for the expansion and is honestly pretty cool. That being said, I feel like maybe the implementation was a little off. It could be as simple as not having other Paladins phase into what should be your Order Hall. Maybe the acquisition should have been metered out over the entire expansion. Maybe if Tyrion's death didn't feel like some sort of whoops, he dead, go get his stuff. I honestly don't have an answer to this question. It doesn't help that Ret Pally DPS and survivability is pretty bad compared to Protection Pallies, forcing me to switch specs for world quests that have you fighting multiple adds at once. Perhaps the feeling of accomplishment can be found in the hidden artifact weapon skins. These skins are unlocked by completing various convoluted tasks. Paladins can even get an updated version of the corrupted Ashbringer by going through many of the same steps I went through years ago. Despite my issues with the artifact weapon implementation, I've got to hand it to Blizzard. With Legion, they really seem to have doubled down on what I've enjoyed most about Warcraft. It's not the same experience I had in Vanilla and Burning Crusade, but it's still been one hell of a ride. Here's to hoping that the Ashbringer story doesn't die with Legion. And that's my story about the Ashbringer. I had a lot of fun poking through my old screenshots and footage while making this video. It's amazing to me that I've been playing this game for almost 10 years now, and I'm still finding new ways to enjoy it. I hope that Blizzard rides the wave of this expansion and pushes the game to be even better than it was before. In my 10 years, I have a lot of stories like this one. If you guys want to see more, let me know in the comments. I'd love to share stories about raiding, PvP, my favorite quests and lore. Also, if you have any stories about your time playing WoW, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear them.